I did do a lot of research and I found a really great video to replacing this, and I'm going to leave a link in the description because I highly recommend checking it out. I'm just stepping my way through it for the first time with home ingenuity. So there's a big snap ring here. Take it, pop that out like so. And then the center hub supposedly slides up and out. And next there's a bigger snap ring right here. And this is where we need that pressing setup. I feel we can accomplish this with a little different setup. There's a plate that goes behind this transmission, in between this transmission and the engine. But what I found is I end up with a nice template. I'm going to make my own flat plate by using this as a template, and we'll be utilizing these two and these two, just like the Ford tool that I seen. If I make any changes to it, guys, I'll show you right away. But I'm going to do this off camera, and then I'll just show you what I made up when we're done. So I'll be right back at you.
I'm just going to give you a quick overview of how we're going to make up these tools. You can pause at any time, look at the measurements. Here I'm checking the outer bore size of that tower because we need something to go over top of it. In addition, that inner input shaft has to fit through the center. In this picture, I'm measuring the cross spread of the clutch plate bolts, and now the opposite direction as well. This is going to be for a template. Here I traced that outer plate onto a piece of 1/4 inch flat steel, and this is that template I made up of the clutch bolts. Now I'm going to center punch them after I centered it on the plate, and now here I went and I transferred and punched them. After that, I trimmed it down and folded the edges to make it more rigid. This center bolt, as you can see, I have it sandwiched with 2 nuts. I'm going to take and weld the 1 nut to the one side. That way, that's going to be my pusher. Here I'm making a bolt with a chamfer. This is so it's self-centering. Next, I took a total of 8 nuts. They're 8 by 1.25 pitch, and we mocked them up on a set of bolts to square them up, and then we welded them together. You'll see what this gets used for later. Next, I had to make up 2 sets of pushers. I know in the video I say schedule 40, but I believe it was schedule 80 stainless steel. The first one I made was a 1 inch stainless nipple. I think it was 3 inches long, and that gave us an outside of 1.32. That allowed us to put it to the center of that tower, the outer input shaft, and that allowed the bearing to pass through. It actually worked out real well. The second one we made was 1.5 inches. Very similar setup. This gave us a 1.5 inside diameter that fit around the outside of that outer output shaft and allowed us to push down on a snap ring. As you've seen, we machined off the one side threads and squared it up. On the opposing side, we put a cap and countersunk for self-aligning.
Okay, so what we got to do next is push down on that snap ring, the retaining ring. It's pinched in there, so we just got to push it down just enough. We don't want the snap ring to bottom out on the opposing side. So like I said, I'll put the measurements and everything, how I machine this stuff and whatnot. I also have a chamfered pushing bolt. So let's get everything started. I should have got different bolts for this, but this will work. At this time, I can't justify the investment buying the puller. However, I'm starting to see more and more of these come in. And I just been sending them out to get done, but they're not covering most of these under warranty, so that's why I do this stuff. I'm not making much money if I'm giving work away. Make sure I'm centered. I'm just going to get a measurement inside just to make sure I'm square. What I'll do later on is I'll make up a set of standoff and tack weld them believe we're there. Alright, I'm not going to go any further than that. I'm going to check it. Okay, it moved. We're good. I'm going to have to pick up the right pair of snap ring pliers today, but I have this modified one that appears like it should be able to. You gotta watch your eyes when you do this stuff. Okay. So that's that. Okay, so it's not that easy to pull out. So now you'll see next piece we made. It's nothing more than a piece of stainless Schedule 40. I believe it's 1 inch. Mic'd out to be damn near perfect, and it will allow the inner race to come up past while we proceed on to the next step. Next is where these pieces came in that we fabricated. These are going to be, well, you'll see when we get to that step. However, like I mentioned, we have this 1 inch Schedule 40 stainless steel. This is machined down on a lathe, and then I put a center starter bit in there just to give something for the pusher to center itself on. And it's just a little bit smaller than the outside perimeter of this collar. So the inner race is going to be able to slide over top of this. However, if it gets off alignment, it's going to have a collision. So what I found is a piece of 3/4 inch heater hose. Fits almost snug. And once I put it over top of the input shaft, I put this there, and it virtually centers it for me with very little movement, if any at all, that will interfere. Okay, now we have our nuts and our center adapter installed. I don't want to put that on here like so. Now those nuts that we welded together earlier, essentially giving us a way to put these bolts onto that clutch pack. As I remember I told you before, this is chamfered. And if you look down in the center, you'll see let's see if I can get this to go. It doesn't feel like I'll need a ratchet, but oh, there it goes. Definitely off. Okay. Set it down. Take a look at what we got here. Perfect. I'll just leave that there for safekeeping for now. Definitely something very odd going on there, huh? I don't know if any of you Ford guys have seen that. Let's take a look inside this case. You can see the what's left of the clutch disc. It was just smoked. You can actually smell it. So is that like a failed pressure plate? It almost appears as if it's been like this for a long time. If you look at the wear on this pressure plate, you up around here, you can see how it's different. Once you get down here, it's like this has barely ever been touched. And then as you get up to the higher ones, you can see how the width gets bigger, and then down to nothing. You get down here. It almost appeared like it was stuck on that pin, but it's not. It's not the case. Well, I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but I think it's hard to deny the fact that wear is different. I believe it's been like that for a very long time. Even if you bring this up, it's not even the same length, unless it's all pushed back. I'm hoping they're clocked in a way you can't mess them up. So we're going to set this off to the side. I don't think those rub marks are supposed to be there either. I'll have to look that up. Had some help here, so took advantage of it, and now we're at a much more comfortable level. So we're going to take and remove the two actuators. Yeah. They've been in there a while. Now he said he had this one back to the dealership once before. And I believe they did the seals and replaced the clutch pack at that time. But we'll know more because I believe the original seals, if I recall correctly from that video, were black, so we'll be able to tell. As you can see, it's dry. Same thing. Next, we're going to take and remove all four of these, and we're going to keep them together. And then you also have four more Torx, 2 on each. So we're just going to set these over here, same way we pull them out. Same thing with this side. Let's set these over here on the bench. I blew the case off before I brought it over to the bench. You see that clutch disc is The remains are all throughout. So now we're going to take and remove these 3 containers. We're going to see if this seal is black or orange. As you can see, it's the newer seal. It's the orange one. So we're going to stop right there tonight, and we'll see if I can line up some parts and get this thing back together. Like I showed you before, it's quite obvious that we have an issue going on here with this clutch pad. You see these 2 are much lower than the rest of them, as I showed you before. In addition, you can see the contact points on all these other fingers. And then we get over to these fingers and it's like non-existent on that corner and barely touching. So we know we definitely had some kind of issue going on there. Whether that was related to the slippage, I truly don't have that answer for you. However, what I do have is a new clutch pack assembly. In addition, we got the 2 seals we'll be replacing as well. As we can see, the lower seal, the bigger the 2 seals, is going to be quite easy to remove and replace with just this standard tools. However, where I'm going to run into problems is getting down to the other input shaft seal. But I think we're going to manage one way or another. But with these seals, as you can see, you have a cavity inside and it's metal. You can pop through this with something like a seal puller, penetrate through that metal and yank it out. What I'm going to try to do is actually use a screw with this type of slide hammer that I made up for pulling dents. As you can see, I just machined a few different ends. I'm going to start a hole with the pick. Like I said, I'm not going to go too deep. And we're going to take and try to get a screw. Starting there, just like so. I'll take my slide hammer, put it on here. Pull that seal. And I'm making sure, make sure everything's spotless down in there. Make sure no dirt fell. A little piece of something there I want to get out. There's that little piece of seal that fell down in there. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to find something that fits the outer perimeter perfect and will put me down flush. It appears there is a lip that it will bottom out on. We just want to go flush with it though. Just one more look at the method I used. Screw with a slide hammer. I use that quite often if I can't get into something that's in a hole like this. I got a seal puller, but it's just, yeah, good luck with that one. Comes with grease on it already, so I'm not going to mix anything else with it. We're just going to make sure it stays clean. Alright, but we're going to get it started down in there.
For this next step, I'm disappointed to say that my battery died in the camcorder and I didn't even realize it, and I didn't notice it until I went to edit the video. However, to seat this seal in, what I did, I found a PVC pipe reducer bushing with an inside diameter of 1.5, I believe, and it fit over top of the input shaft. And I was able, and the outer circumference matched up exactly to the outer perimeter, actually a little bit larger than the outer perimeter of the seal. And I was able to use that to seat the seal in perfectly by using a piece of pipe as an extension and tapping it down.
Now the fun part. So I'm going to do something very similar with that seal. But before we go pulling it, I want to take a measurement. And how I determine that, just taking closest away, set it to 0. And on this end we have our depth. We're going to run that down. Fill touches. Measuring a couple different spots. We know how deep to make it from the ledge of this tower. How are we going to pull that out? Well, I don't have the proper tools once again. So what I do have is a punch. Well, a pick that'll fit down deep enough, start a hole in it, put a longer screw in it, and pull it. Got it. Hot dog. The main thing you want to make certain of, guys, is that you don't go too deep. And you want to get dead center in that. Try to get as center as possible and don't go down any more than like 3/16 of an inch. Okay, so now as we're preparing for the next seal, the snap-on 13/16 seems to be the correct fit. What I want to do, I'll lock it there. I'm going to take this socket. I want to put a mark there. We got to make sure your socket goes deep enough, and it does. And here, coincidentally, it's just before the socket bottoms out. But we know we don't want to go that deep. We just want to go to the very edge of that marker that I just put on there. I'll put a couple. Once we start approaching that black mark, we got to stop just shy of it. Okay, so now to put the seal on, I just want to show you what the old one, it's a tight fit. Around these splines, and the splines aren't smooth. So I really don't want that new seal sliding against that. So I got this piece of shim stock. It's 3/1000. I trimmed it, rounded the edges. I'm going to have to trim it down a little bit. And trim it down the depth of the socket. I'm going to take some emery cloth, make these edges perfect. You can feel right there is the top of that shoulder. So I'm going to take this socket. Okay, I feel now that it's starting to go over top, and our shim stock is out, and we're clear of the splines. Now
we just gotta tap it in until we're close to those black marks, if you recall. Let's take a measurement. That should be perfect. Okay, we're good. And we got this piece that's going to go in next. I'm gonna make sure everything's spotless. Oh, as spotless as you can get it. This one didn't have any leakage, so it's not heavily contaminated with oil. I was almost tempted on leaving those seals in it. And we have our 3 bolts. Clean all these pieces as good as I can get them. Now we're just gonna make sure your dowel pins are in place. Try to get my bolts started. Another thing I picked up is that you want to have one of these sets of lines lined up with the opposing lines there. We don't want to tighten it yet. Actually, I want to leave it loose. Put your next one in. Same thing. Remember, leave it loose for now. Okay, while they're still loose, you want to take in, for alignment reasons, and while they're in there, you start tightening everything down. Okay, and like I mentioned before, make sure the lines are lined up. Torque these ones to 14 foot-pounds. I got them torqued already, but 14. Now at that point you can take and pull out the actuators. We got the small tube of grease that comes with the clutch kit from Ford. And they want us to put a little bit on the splines. And just like the video that I referred to during this whole installation, I'm going to put a little bit on the shift forks. Tell you guys, this video is much better. It's got the right tools. I highly recommend following his procedure. We're just gonna, I don't want this stuff slinging around later. So I'm just gonna put small amounts in there and wipe off the excess. We're gonna smear this in. And then right around here where the bearing goes, we're gonna put a small amount of trans fluid. I just got a small amount of fluid. Okay, so next we're gonna install this support tower. It only goes in one way. You see once you get it in the right way, it'll fall right in. Okay, you want to make sure the washers stay good, and you don't want your tranny moving at this point. So if you need to block it in any special manner, do so now, because from the way to make this sound, this is one of the more important steps. Alright, so next with the new clutch, we're going to take these double nuts that we fabricated. Install them like so. We're going to use that to lift the clutch up out of the box. Now, like I said before, guys, we want to make certain that everything up here is ready to go. It's stable. The Z washers are centered. We're going to take and remove the center spline collar. You can see there's a mark. We'll line that back up later. Alright. As you can see here, the clutches the springs are retaining it down in place. And that's one of the pieces right here that I found down inside that tranny. I think that was tearing up that bottom collar. Looks like one of them clips. This must be the new revised setup. So now we're going to be really careful. Try to do this without shaking it. There she goes. And you can see she's down in. The tower's up halfway through the bearing, so everything's going just as planned. Take and remove these. Alright, in this next step we're going to use this to push the center race back down as we press that bearing onto that tower. We want to stop as the tower just starts coming out, because then we want to put our retaining ring back on. However, watching the video once again, I noticed that there's a little, like a notch cut out of their pusher, and I see why. That's like a little window that they can see in there and see how far down they pressed. Now we have a window too. Alright, I'll be able to get that snap ring onto the top ledge now.
Okay, I think I'm down far enough. I gotta be careful now. I fly off of there. However, now I'm going to press down against that snap ring until it just clips in. I think I just heard fire. Okay, the snap ring just went into its groove. I'm just going to give it a little tiny bit more. Right there. So if you can see, that snap ring is now in its groove. So I just simply went down until I heard it just go click, and then I just went just a tiny bit more. Okay, so next we're going to reinstall the center hub. You can see it has a mark here. It came with the new clutch kit. Index mark here, and then you have that plastic nub inside. Okay, so it's just done like so. This new retainer ring comes with the kit as well. And you want to put it evenly in between that mark, because if you look inside you have that piece of plastic that'll keep the retaining spring from going into its groove. In addition, you want to keep the ends of the retaining spring like midway. You can do this with a screwdriver. You can see that's fully seated all the way around. Okay. So now before we move to tranny at all, we got to release the clutch discs, because as you've seen, those metal bands that were retaining that pressure plate, I guess we'll call it, disengaged. We're going to have to release them bands. You should really go out and get the proper tool for this, guys. It's a spline, like so. I measured it up and felt it. It's really close to 6mm. Now I won't be catching every spline, but I'll be catching every corner, and it slides in really good. I had to take a file to it, just a tad, and I had to grind the nub. It was like a ball socket that wouldn't work. So we got that slid in there. Now we're going to turn it counterclockwise right around 14 times until we hear the clutch disengage. So we're right here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm pretty sure we got it 14 times, as they call before. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the other one. Same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I did it 14 times, but I heard it disengage. We're just gonna let this unwind. A little bit of never sees. So far, so good. Click. 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 Now that we have everything reassembled on the transmission, it's time to start putting it back in the car. To be honest with you guys, I'm not going to have time to cover every step putting this back in. However, it's pretty much reverse of the way we took it out. And I'll stop, pause, and cover anything that I think needs to be highlighted during the installation. Pretty much when I'm putting it in, it's just going to be me struggling, getting the bell housing aligned in addition to lining up the torque, or not torque converter. It's very similar to a torque converter. However, the bolts on the clutch pack, the studs, have to line up and go through these holes. And you see how this one hole has this yellow dot near it, and we have this yellow paint next to it as well. If you come back over to the transmission, on the clutch here you'll see this triangle. We're going to take and we're going to mark this just to make this so we can see it a little better. I know it's a little dark here, but you see this yellow dot. You can see where someone has yellow paint here already. That's where that stud's going to line up. And that's pretty much a balanced location to match up the flex plate to the clutch assembly. As you can see, the training's up in place. We got the two top bell bolts started in, and those are the ones I started first. And here's how I did it. I know you guys are gonna laugh at this, but I didn't have the proper tranny jack for this transmission, or for a transmission for a lift. I got a small one, but it wouldn't feel good underneath it. So I actually used a chair, a very well built stool, I should say. And I've used this for doing trainings actually quite a few times. And I blocked it to pretty much match the bell housing. So as I let the vehicle down, I just kept on moving the stool around, making sure the transmission wasn't hitting anything on its way up. Once I got the two top bell bolts within alignment, I started them in. However, I didn't tighten them up. I just started them in like a full nut's worth. It still left a gap between the bell housing of about 3/4 of an inch. Because what we don't want to do is force that new clutch pack has the studs on it. You've got to make sure they're lined up with the flex plate and in the right orientation. And as you remember, my yellow mark was over on this side. So I didn't want to go through and turn the motor and everything, since we had everything where we took it apart last and that nut was lined up with the last one I removed. So what I did was went directly across, marked the tip of that one blue. That way I could look up in here and align it and then pull everything in tight once I had pretty much alignment pins I was using the bolts as. Then I just stuck my hand up into the starter hole, and then I could reach back with two fingers and move the clutch pack until it looked like I was lined up perfect. And then I just pulled the transmission in, lined them up, and then we just ran these in by hand until they were snug. That way nothing falls out. Alright, I'm going to take this inspection camera and try to give you guys a shot of what it looks like up in there. You see the bolt stud?
Yep.
There. This is the best shot. Let me see. Well, you can see it's through its hole, and I have the blue dot on it. So I know I'm 180 out from the opposing one, so it's lined up right where it has to go, and we're through. You gotta make sure that stud is lined up with those holes, otherwise you will mess things up. Very important step.
One important note here, when you go to tighten the nuts that attach the flex plate to the clutch, you got to follow the sequence. As you see, it's marked in a clockwise rotation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. However, when you turn the engine clockwise, it's going to go in the opposite direction. So you're going to torque 1, 5, and 3. This is a two-stage sequence. First stage, tighten nuts 1, 5, and 3 to 106 inch-pounds. Then on the second stage, tighten all nuts to 18 foot-pounds.
2 bell bolts, got them in, snugged up by hand, along with the bottom ones. We're going to take and reinstall this upper transmission mount so we're supported. And we got this bad boy. As you can see, it's got to come up a little bit, in addition back. So we'll just start by putting them 2 nuts in place. Now keep in mind, I still have the engine and everything supported across the strut towers. So I'm gonna raise this up a little bit, get it off that stool. Okay, we're actually right where we want it. So now I get them 2 bolts. You can see they were right there before with the old marks. At this time I can take and remove this carriage that we made. Alright, next I'm just going to button everything up underneath. Axles, ball joints. Okay, so I pretty much have everything back together. I went ahead and got on a roll and I had the whole top together. I got the battery back in it. Everything's pretty much buttoned up. However, I got to put fluid in the transmission. It's dual clutch transmission fluid. I had to buy it directly from Ford and be prepared to pay like $40 for 2 quarts. So we want to make sure, of course, that we have the drain plug tight. It's right underneath here, 8mm, and she's tight. We drained that earlier. So pretty much this procedure, if you're changing your fluid, you'd follow the same steps. You got this drain plug, break that loose, you can start draining it right away. And then you come up here, and this is where your fill plug is located. And of course that the subframe is bolted up right in the way. But what I found, I used just a regular 8mm Allen wrench, and I was able to get in there like so, break it loose, and then you could just use the ball socket portion of it to pull it the rest of the way out. We're gonna fill it until it starts running out. And what I'm going to use for that is essentially just a funnel with a flexible neck on it. And it shouldn't take any more than 2 quarts. There's that one. Put that in there. It shouldn't run out in a steady stream. There it goes. Now I know I'm full. Yeah. Because I know I can reach in there. Okay.
Get yourself a torque wrench and torque that to spec. Just a little peace of mind. Now it's going to take some cleaner. Well, it's just about the moment of truth, guys. I reached out to a fellow YouTuber to make certain I could start this prior to having the touch points relearn. And because I have a guy that's going to be coming here, a mobile tech from Ford, that's going to do the relearn process and any updates that are needed. And he said, yeah, I can make sure it starts. That way I can do it before he gets on site. So everything's back together up top. Air cleaner, box, battery, tranny mount. Tranny's full of fluid. Shifting linkage cable is hooked back up. All electrical is plugged back in. I'm not going to try putting it in the gear or anything. I just want to make certain it starts. I guess we're ready to start it up. All right. Just going to get it into the on position.
Ready.
I'm going to close the door and hold the brake. So we know it runs. Okay, I have to rewind a little bit. As you can see, she's behind me running. I just had a mobile technician, a Ford specialist, stop by and relearn and reprogram, well, update the latest calibrations in the PCM. He did the TCM learning, adaptive learning, train drain sensors, shift drum, clutch touch points, and every update that was available to the current. One thing he did mention was, luckily I saved this tag. Clutch kit came with this service tag. It's a newer style clutch. So he said, luckily I had this number and I didn't lose this tag because he would have been screwed. He wasn't even aware of it. But luckily when he went to do the updates, it asked him for it. I did pay close attention while he was doing it because I am going to purchase the IDS software. This way, later on, I could do this stuff myself. He did a great job, and right now it's at the point where at the final steps, it told you to let it run for like 20 minutes, shut it off for like an hour or something, let it cool down, and then start it back up, let it get up to operating temperature, shut it back down, and then check the fluid, and then take it for a nice long ride. So that's what we're waiting for now. I thought his pricing was reasonable, to be honest. He ran into a couple little hiccups. He also updated the PCM and the TCM. He did everything in one shot. It took him close to an hour with that little hiccup, and plus he came to the shop. So it was like 175, somewhere around there. So I don't know if he was doing me a favor, if it would be more than that. Generally, it was my first time having a service tech come here because of something like this. And to be honest with you, I don't know if this clutch pack would have worked. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't have all this done, because it was quite the process, to say the least. And it's an updated clutch. It's not. It's in the description it said it must be done. So, and that was also a service tech at Ford. He said if you put this newer style clutch setup in it, you got to relearn it. You got to go through these procedures. And they actually referred this mobile tech. So it's VTech, VETECH, and they're out of Red Hill, Pennsylvania, 18076. You know, it's a timely process, and I had a great experience with him. I was going to throw up the camera, but I didn't want to make him feel awkward. Or, to be honest with you, I wanted everything to go. I wanted his focus to be on getting this right. And after
watching the videos on YouTube, I kind of took my own personal notes and made sure that those steps were followed. Thank God for that video. And like I said, I'm going to reference it in the description. And I highly recommend you checking that out if you want to learn how to do this 100% correctly. Buy the book with the right tools. Right now, it's working good. I've let it run for over a half hour. I shut it down, cooled it off, started it back up, put it back on the lift, checked the fluid. I'm just about ready to take it for a road test. Goes in and out of the gears smooth. There's no rough engagement right now. I haven't took it down the road to see how it shifts. What Mobile Tech suggested to me, he said a lot of dealerships, they place this in the glove box. They tell you to put it on the transmission. He goes, but the best place to put it is actually by your tag here. And place it right there. He said in his years of experience, it doesn't get missed that way. And the next technician will come in to verify the model year and month and see that tag. Okay guys, we've got about 15 miles on it so far. And got myself on a nice back road that was relatively straight. And took it nice and easy, let it shift through all the gears. And this was after the whole warm-up procedure. As you can tell, the thing, I don't have a mount for this camera, so it's probably shaky. So far, everything feels nice and smooth. I don't feel any concerns whatsoever at this point. This thing's shifting beautifully. I'm gonna put a few miles on it. I'm gonna maybe travel to Quakertown or something. It's about a 20-minute ride. Grab a bite to eat, 20 minutes back. Make sure everything's good, put it up on the lift one more time, and make sure we have no leaks. After this job, it just goes to prove to myself that I could do it. I could pull it off. With a little bit of ingenuity, some fabrication, that took maybe an hour. Saved me whatever that tool is. I think I priced it out around $1,200, somewhere around there. I could have grabbed one for. And we accomplished pretty much the same thing that those tools were going to accomplish, with a little extra detail being applied because we didn't have the stop set. Now I could have easily put a shaft collar around those sockets and set the depth and just press the seal down until the shaft collar hit. I thought about it afterwards. Would have been a great addition to that tool, but it's something we can add later, and it's a learning process. With all that being said, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I know we didn't cover everything, but I wanted to cover some of the things and what I go through to make my customers happy, save them a little bit of money in the end, and in the process gain knowledge myself. And those tools will be in my shop forever, so as long as I'm able to keep them around, they'll be around. So for the next one that comes in, hopefully I'll be able to find all the pieces. We'll be able to do the same task, and at that time I'll be able to do the programming myself and share that with you guys as well. So if you guys are interested in any of these shirts, I had these ones made up for myself. Throw out some ideas. I would like to get my name out there a little bit more. You know, I put a lot of work into this over the years, and I hope it shows. And I'm progressing with time. I know I slack on the videos, but doesn't mean I'm slacking on work. 2 jobs is a lot. You throw in a third one, put a guy over the edge. This channel is something that means probably more, I can't say more than the garage, but more than a lot of things that I've done and that I do. But it's an accomplishment. It's something that never built to the goals I wanted to set, but it's never too late, you know. I got some schooling coming up. I'm going to start attending more classes, educating myself. It's a self-investment. And on-the-job training is great. Like you've seen, I just went through, this was on-the-job training. I watch YouTube. I learned from our fellow Ford Tech. Great channel. And I implemented his instructions into this video. And it pulled me through very successfully, I believe, man. This thing, you see, we've been driving for quite a while, stop and go traffic, and it's hot out. And not a shudder, not a slip. That's enough of me rambling on for one day. Just wanted to let you guys know I miss you, and I hope you're all doing well. I appreciate the support for those of you that stuck around. I hope you come out of this experience learning something. It's a beautiful day.